Hello again, and welcome back to Announcing the Game, where professional public address announcers share their expertise and best practices to help to make you a better public address announcer. I'm Tom Winicki. I've announced at the high school level for many years, including sports like football, soccer, field hockey, basketball, ice hockey, volleyball, lacrosse, wrestling, baseball, and track and field. I've announced many Section 3 championships in New York State for field hockey, football, basketball, and lacrosse. And I announced the New York State championships for girls lacrosse and for football. I currently announce at the Division I level at Colgate University of the Patriot League and at Syracuse University of the Atlantic Coast Conference. Now at this level, I've announced football, soccer, field hockey, ice hockey, volleyball, basketball, lacrosse, and softball. I'm also the National Association of Sports Public Address Announcers Public Address Announcer of the Year for 2017. Today, let's talk about our voices. Now, in some of our previous videos, I've mentioned tools in our PA announcer's toolbox, like rosters or stat sheets, pencils, erasers, or highlighters, and so on. The most important tool that we bring to every game is our voice. I was a teacher for many years at the elementary and middle school levels, as well as at the college level. I've learned how important my voice was, not only in communicating my curriculum to my students, but how I communicated it. How I use simple things like inflection and tone to help me be a more effective teacher. I also know what those first few weeks of school were like on my voice. I was hoarse for a while after teaching all day in September. My voice, well, it had to get back in shape, and it did so the hard way. Now, if I only knew then what I know now and what I'm about to share with you. It's easy to take something like our voices for granted. Now, those of you out there that are teachers, well, you know what September can be like. Our voice, well, it's always there, and we can use it whenever we want, until that is, when we lose it. What we have to realize is our voice, like anything else, needs to be taken care of. Now, many of us are often in situations where we get to announce multiple games on a given day. Now, just like the players and coaches, we work games all season to get to the postseason. To land these assignments is a big deal for us. Someone thought highly enough of our work during the season to trust us with playoff games that they're hosting. Now, we'll go over some things that you can do to both maintain your voice and prepare it for your next game or games. Now, calling multiple games in a day, as I said, that's a big deal for us. But what goes along with that is that our voice can take a beating if we're not proactive about taking care of it. So let's go over some ways that you can keep your voice in shape to handle not only that one game this week, but all those multiple games in those conference or leagues tournaments, or that day-long wrestling, swimming, or track championship. In preparing for this tutorial, I talked with a church choir director who's also a high school music teacher, who's worked with performers ranging from elementary school to those who have gone on to perform on Broadway. I talked with a speech-language pathologist who provides voice therapy to all areas, from everyday people to professional performers. I also talked with an ear, nose, and throat doctor who's seen the results of overusing one's voice. Now, many of those professionals' advice to me was similar, no matter who was telling it to me. The number one thing was hydration. All of them said that water is the best. Now, some people think that warm liquid is better. We'll touch on that a little bit more later. Now, one note about hydration. Don't expect to get hydrated just by drinking during your game. Plan to drink throughout the day and the day before. Avoid things that dehydrate you, things like caffeine, smoking, alcohol, or decongestants. It goes without saying to avoid smoking or vaping. By definition, the smoke is dry, and that only serves to dry out our throat. Some people used to believe that smoking gave you that deep, resonant voice. Well, nothing can be further from the truth. Besides, is sacrificing your overall health worth a potentially deeper voice? I hope not. Alcohol is another big thing to avoid. Now, I'm not here to say that we should give it up completely. I enjoy a good beer myself. I even brew my own, and I've been known to enjoy a home brew after announcing a game. Just understand that alcohol is a diuretic. It dries you out. Not to mention the obvious effect of alcohol that it has on us. The last thing we want to ever do is have a drink before stepping up to the mic. Now, caffeine is also a diuretic and will counteract any hydration from drinking that particular liquid. The speech pathologist and that ear, nose, and throat doctor told me that people will often think that since coffee's made with water, it must hydrate you. Remember, the caffeine in the coffee is a diuretic and dries you out. Now that goes for the hot tea that some of us use as well. Now there's not as much caffeine in tea as coffee, but there's still enough that it's a diuretic. So if hot tea is your thing, look for decaffeinated tea. Now, here's something else for those hot tea drinkers out there. Sugar causes phlegm to build up in your throat. The honey that you put in your hot tea, well, that's just liquid sugar. Adding honey to tea is just like adding sugar. And since sugar causes phlegm to build up in your throat, you need to avoid that. I've always liked hot lemon echinacea tea during games. It's decaffeinated, no sugar, and I've been able to announce 3 football games back to back with no problem. Now there's one thing that all these people have told me, that water, as we said, that's the best to hydrate you. Warm or hot liquid, well, it may feel better in our mouth or in our throat, but there's no real research out there that says that hot is actually better. So temperature just comes down to a personal preference. The speech language pathologist also told me something interesting about hydration. She said that the structures in your throat are the first thing to dry out when the body's low on liquid, and they're the last to rehydrate. So it's important to stay hydrated all the time. And plus, another thing to know is that whatever we drink never actually touches our vocal cords. Now, just like you can't target one area of your body to lose weight from, you can't just hydrate your vocal cords. Your whole body has to be hydrated for your vocal cords to be hydrated. A note about throat lozenges. A lot of us use those lozenges with menthol in them. Now, we like how it opens up our nasal passages, but in doing this, the menthol will also dry out your throat, and we don't want that. Instead, look for lozenges whose first ingredient is something called pectin. Now that won't dry out your throat like the menthol will. We've already talked about staying away from sugar to prevent that phlegm from building up. So what about diet soda? Well, those artificial sweeteners in those drinks can still act as diuretics and dehydrate us. Plus, remember the caffeine in them that you're trying to avoid in the first place. Now, what about sugar in your food? When we have that break between games and we want something to eat, that cookie or other treats on the plate sure looks good, but the sugar in it will only cause phlegm to build up again. I know that brownie or that pasta dish between games sure looks better than that apple or that garden salad. But if we really want our voice to be at its best all day, we need to make the best decision here. After hearing all those things that we need to avoid, what about something that we need a lot of before our games? Well, that is rest. Get plenty of sleep. 7 to 8 hours is a good goal. If you have a big day announcing coming up, be sure to get plenty of sleep. Now, speaking of phlegm, excuse me, we've all had to clear our throats before. Now, did you know that when you clear your throat like that, you're actually slamming your vocal cords together? Not a good thing for your voice. So when you feel the need to clear your throat, take a drink or suck on that lozenge with pectin we talked about. Doing that creates more saliva in your mouth and the need to swallow, canceling that feeling of the need to clear your throat. Now, either when doing single games or multiple games, take advantage of any voice breaks you get between quarters or halftime or the time between games. But remember, socialization, that's important to us as human beings. but keep that to a minimum when you're doing multiple games in a day. So we do what we need to do to be able to keep our voices in the best condition possible. If you announce a great deal, take voice naps on your off days. Quiet time where you don't speak to anybody. Well, that is, within reason. But what if you lose your voice? Your voice cracks. You have a lingering sore throat. Maybe you've had acid reflux that affects your voice, or a respiratory infection. Folks, don't diagnose these things yourself. Give your primary care physician a call and let them recommend a course of action. Humidifiers, well, they're a big help as long as you can keep them clean. Keep one in your office or in your bedroom at night, especially for those of us who work games in the winter months when windows can't be open. That dry air from the furnace can dry out your voice pretty quickly. We've all heard the lectures about getting enough exercise. A simple walk that gets you huffing a bit, well, that's all it takes. Now, my son-in-law is in the Army Reserves. What he does to stay in shape is much different than what I do to stay in shape. Both of us have found what we need to do to stay fit, to live our lives the way we both want to. And above all, folks, please remember what your parents and teachers all told you. Wash your hands. We're all handling microphones and putting them close to our mouths. If you work in a place where multiple people use a mic and it makes you more comfortable, carry those wipes with you and wipe down those mics as you settle in for the game. Now, we've already talked about how keeping hydrated is important to our voices. We want that tool to be in tip-top shape all game long. But there are other things that we can do to put our voice in the best position possible. So let's start by getting warmed up. Before I get into this, a bit of a disclaimer. I'm recording this tutorial right after a Memorial Day weekend. My wife and I, along with my brother and his wife, had just come back from seeing a Beach Boys concert on Memorial Day to kick off our summers. This band had been performing together for over 60 years. Well, truth be told, I've listened to this group since high school. I know all the words to their songs and sang away at the top of my lungs all concert long. We had a terrific time, and I blew out my voice. Now, I probably still won't warm up my voice before the next concert my wife and I go to, but the point is, these performers have been doing a smart thing that enabled their voices to perform at such a high level for over 60 years. So let's learn a little bit from performers like this. Well, let's start with some jaw or mouth stretches. How about an exaggerated yawn? Or exaggerated vocal sounds. E, I, O, U. How about fluttering your lips? Humming, well, that's a good thing to do. It's low stress on our vocal cords, and it engages some muscles that we'll need to pronounce words correctly. Humming is good to do, say, on the drive to the game. Now, to use another musical group as an example, you don't want to jump into singing AC/DC first off in the car on the way to the game. Well, let's see. How long can you hum on one breath? Work on low, medium, and high-pitched hums. And what you'll find out is that you can last longer on a lower note humming. Use that to remind us to avoid getting overly excited with our voice on the mic and our voices rise. If not, you run the risk of running out of breath before the end of a sentence while announcing game action. Kind of embarrassing. Tongue twisters, well, they're great exercises. We have a whole lot of them available on our website, publicaddressannouncer.org. Once there, click the tools at the top of the screen, then scroll down until you see twisters. Click that, and you'll find a long list of fun tongue twisters to try. There's even a few tests for prospective radio announcers from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Work on saying them clearly at first, then add some inflection to them and try to go faster and faster each time. Here's an example. Betty Botter bought a bit of butter, but she said, "This butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter that would make my batter better." So Betty Botter bought a bit of better butter, better than her bitter butter. She put it in her bitter batter and made her bitter batter a bit better. Now this next one's a tough one because it uses sounds generated from different parts of your mouth. Unique, New York. Unique, New York. Unique, New York. Unique, New York. I still need to work on that one. The radio tests are pretty fun. Here's one. 1 hen, 2 ducks, 3 squawking geese, 4 Limerick oysters, 5 corpulent porpoises, 6 pair of Donald Verzo's tweezers, 7,000 Macedonians in full battle array, 8 brass monkeys from the ancient sacred crypts of Egypt, 9 apathetic, sympathetic, diabolic old men on roller skates with a marked propensity toward procrastination and sloth, 10 lyrical, spherical, diabolical denizens of the deep, who all stall around the corner of the key of the quivery, all at the very same time. So try those a few times, just reading it straight through. Then try to add some inflection, maybe something like this. 1 hen, 2 ducks, 3 squawking geese, 4 Limerick oysters, 5 corpulent porpoises, 6 pair of Donald Verzo's tweezers, 7,000 Macedonians in full battle array, 8 brass monkeys from the ancient sacred crypts of Egypt, 9 apathetic, sympathetic, diabetic old men on roller skates with a marked propensity toward procrastination and sloth, 10 lyrical, spherical, diabolical denizens of the deep who all stall around the corner of the key of the quivery, all at the very same time. Then there's the old cork in the mouth one. I found this on a book on voice acting. Read a few lines of copy. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Then clench that cork between your teeth and read the same lines of copy, enunciating every syllable of every word. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Then take the cork out of your mouth and read the lines again. You'll see the words come out much clearer. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Now this, you could tell the difference if you record yourself reading it before with the cork and then after and listen to the recording. You'll notice that it sounds more clearer. Now I do admit, these are a little embarrassing on the surface, but they're worth it. The athletes in the games that we all announce warm up pregame. Why shouldn't we go through our pregame warm-ups as well? Some other warm-ups that you can do before a game involve your neck and your shoulders. Range of motion exercises like neck rolls and shoulder shrugs and shoulder rolls. Well, they're good to start with. Now, when stretching, make them passive stretches. Use your hand to push your head to the side. Use your hand to stretch. Use your hand to stretch. Don't make them active stretches where your muscles are trying to stretch and do the work. That counteracts any stretching. So relax yourself and use your hand to help you. During our game, also be aware of your posture. The speech-language pathologist called this the 90-90-90. Keep 90-degree angles in your ankles, knees, and hips. Basically what our mothers told us when we sat down to dinner. Tom, don't slouch, sit up straight. I know when I announce a tight game, I can feel my shoulders tightening up and I lean forward, especially in basketball games, when that coach always seems to be standing in front of me. Why do they do that? Learn to notice that in yourself and learn to relax your shoulders and roll them backwards. Don't forget to always try to sit up straight. Remember Mom's advice. Chest breathing in general is more shallow, so try to take deep, low breaths. Try to learn to feel your voice being driven from your diaphragm and not from your throat. We can also be animated on the mic without necessarily being louder. Learn to let the microphone do the work for us. Use that inflection in your voice. So listen to this next read and see if you can hear the difference in inflection without hearing my voice get markedly louder or softer. Count the basket for Moffat. Leopard's foul to number 4, Jones. That's his first personal. 4th team foul. Moffat with 1 shot. Now how about this one? Simmons on the carry, 6 yards on the run, and a Raider. First down. Now notice how the emphasis changed through those announcements, and I did it without having to necessarily increase the volume. Again, learn to let the microphone do the work for us. When we yell after a big play, we strain our voice, and in the long run, that's never a good thing. Learn to emphasize something without having to yell. All in all, our voices are the most important tool that we bring to the games. Without it working at peak efficiency, our performance suffers. Try to get into the habit of proactively taking care of your voice. Get into the habit of using some of the exercises we went over here. Try some of those tongue twisters. Record yourself reading some game copy, using inflection in different parts. Then listen to them and see how it sounds, and then use the ones that you liked in your next set of games. Now, it goes without saying that if we take care of our voice, it will take care of us. And in our business, that's very important. Be sure to check out our website, publicaddressannouncer.org, for more information and all things public address announcing. And please send any constructive comments to me at my email address on the screen. I'm always looking for feedback. So thanks for watching this episode of Announcing the Game. I'm Tom Winicki, and I can't wait to hear you on the mic.